If you take the advice of our American cousins and do the math, the figures aren't good. Annual rod catch at Newtyle in 2015 was 253, and that was a very good year. The total possible fishing effort is 40 weeks times 6 days a week times 6 rods per day. That comes to a total of 1440 days of fishing, excluding the boat fishing. With reductions for floods, illness, no-shows and alcohol-related absences, let's say that leaves 1200 days of fishing every year. That means that the average fisherman needs to fish for over 5 days to catch a salmon. That's salmon fishing, folks. Or to put it another way, if you go to Newtyle on a 3-day trip, as an average angler, you won't be due to catch a fish until 3 p.m. on the 3rd day after you get back to work. And even if you do catch one, you've got to put it back. So why do we bother? Why do we make the 520-mile round trip from Merseyside or a 1,000-mile round trip from South Wales like these guys? Why do we spend upwards of £400, let's not quote exact figures in case the spouses are listening, on the fishing, the accommodation, travel and alcohol, not necessarily in that order? Why do we allow ourselves to get cold and wet and despondent, and that's even if we don't fall in? Well, this is what I think's going on. When I talk about the beauty of Newtyle, let's make it clear I'm not talking about the ghillie Andy Gunn. He's a handsome man in his own way and much admired by all of his customers for his kindness and generosity of spirit and the poetry of his language. But it took me 2 trips to realise that his new dog actually had a name. I thought Andy just used a list of expletives and went back to the beginning when he'd used them all up. Come here, you little! But no, Harris is the dog's name. And let's not forget Andy's immense powers of motivation, which are truly the stuff of legend, if a little alternative. Struggling with your single spey in a force 9 blow, your line's dropping like a sack of... Just lost a fish. Oh, coward, what you playing at? Just snapped in a fish, which is a personal tragedy for most people. Well, let's just say that Alistair from Carlisle was subjected to a 2-day barrage of motivational love from Andy, and leave it at that. So inspirational in an alternative way, but it's all designed to help us cast further, fish harder and catch more. It's not big, it's not clever, but it can be very entertaining and surprisingly it's strangely addictive. And therein I think lies one element of the magic of Newtyle. A 1,000-mile round trip, you don't get a sniff of a fish, but at least you can hold your head up and take pride in the knowledge that you survived the verbal haranguing of the ghillie whose wages you just paid. How good is that? So what else is special about Newtyle? Well, firstly that would be the quality of the fish, which is exceptional. You do get coloured fish later in the year, but fishing up to June I still haven't seen anything that wasn't a bar of silver, and some of them have been dripping with sea lice. So straight from the sea, and £20 plus fish are a real prospect. Then there's the company. You can take your own or meet some new people. Police officers, engineers, factory workers, company directors, and of course the droves of silver foxes struggling to survive on meagre pensions. God help them, some of them are down to their last Range Rover. Either way, the crack over lunch is excellent and the company's great. You can talk about tackle, modern stuff and older stuff, for example my Abu Cardinal 55, dismissed by Andy as a heap of junk, but widely regarded as the best fixed spool reel ever made. And you can talk about tactics and check out other people's fly boxes. Does that sound a bit weird? It's not meant to. Some are structured and beautiful, maybe even a bit anal. Others like mine are comfortable and lived in, although my storage box is a little tidier. And when lunch is over, it's back to work. And then there's the scenery and the wildlife, the real beauty of Newtyle. I've never been there very early in the year, but I'm sure the weather can be brutal in January. And I've never been in the back end, but I imagine that it would be beautiful. But in April, May and June you can expect to see kingfishers and buzzards and ospreys. I saw them all last week, but difficult to photograph, so sorry, no pics. But then there's lots of other things to see. Most of the shots in this slideshow were taken in a single day at the beginning of June, when the lupins were absolutely spectacular. But just to be a little bit contentious, now is probably a good time to slot in some philosophy, and it goes like this. The sole aim, ambition, drive and desire in salmon fishing is to tempt, hook, play and eat a salmon. The company, the crack, the wildlife, the scenery are all secondary. We know that because at the end of a hard week, or maybe an even harder season, the guys who've not caught salmon have a lean and haunted look about them. You see, it's bigger than fishing. It goes back to man is hunter and provider, and if you can't put food on the table for your kids, catch and release messes this up a little bit, your manhood is brought into question. That's the end of the philosophy. When people like Colin Pillman of Carlisle sit on the bank at the fence end on the Eden and say a fish is just a bonus, well, it's easy to say that when you've just caught 6 salmon in the morning on the flying sea and no one else got a chance. The rest of us that day were pretty demoralised before the comment. After it, we were an inch away from beating him to a pulp and feeding him to the lampreys. Sorry you had to hear that from me, Colin. So remember that whenever anyone says a fish is a bonus, it isn't. And anyway, if you're looking for company and nice scenery, join the Ramblers Association or go on a Shearing's bus tour. You'll save a fortune. Moving on, if you do need to improve your casting, you can always take some lessons. Here's Tom Brown with some students, and he seemed to get them moving very quickly. I don't need lessons myself, not because my casting's wonderful, it's just that at the age of 61 I've achieved a zen-like state. You can call me grasshopper. You see, where I am now, perfection no longer matters. I possess a wisdom based on the following principles that help a lot when it comes to casting. 1. As my friend Richard Brown's dad used to say, you don't catch them in the air. That's very true, so I now regard casting as just a necessary evil in between when the flies are working in the water. 2. As I once told fence end pal Bob Robinson, a salmon doesn't know it was a bad cast. I don't even remember saying that to him. I wish I could remember my pearls of wisdom. If I could, I wouldn't have to keep inventing new ones. 3. Thanks to the flow of the river, all casts are the same after about 3 seconds. And finally, 4. If you need to cast another 5 yards, you can use a longer leader and wade 3 yards further. And if that doesn't get you far enough, use a flying sea, any colour you like as long as it's black and gold or red and gold. So that's about it, but before we wind up, let's go back to Alistair. We left him in his own particular kind of hell, demoralised and depressed and subject to Andy's loving motivational programme. We can't leave him there for eternity, so let's go back a couple of years to happier times. And let's end by saying thanks to Andy Gunn. We all love him really for being such a warm, gentle, kind-hearted, supportive, knowledgeable guide and mentor on the water. Andy, sorry if I missed out any of the things you told me to say here. If I did, you can let me know and I'll add them in again at the final draft. You've been listening to Howard Jackson of Open Door Multimedia talking about Newtyle, salmon fishing and the meaning of life, but not necessarily in that order. I hope you enjoyed this slideshow, and if you haven't seen it yet, check out my 2013 Newtyle video called Mr. Dobson's Party. You'll find it on YouTube. Tight lines.